Before there was a place called Montura Ranch Estates, there was just the land. And in this part of Florida, the land tells a story all its own. We're talking about Hendry County, a sprawling expanse of subtropical wilderness tucked away from the theme parks and crowded beaches. Picture this, a vast flat plain stretching as far as the eye can see. It wasn't always the easiest place to live. The landscape was a mix of sawgrass prairies, dense cypress swamps, stubborn pine flatwoods. This was the raw material, the blank canvas, long before developers and dreamers showed up with their blueprints and their big ideas. It was a place shaped by water fire, the slow, relentless march of the seasons. This wasn't a landscape that gave up its secrets easily. The ground itself was a challenge. You had sandy soil in some places, perfect for pine trees, and rich, dark muck in others. For much of the year, especially during the rainy summer months, large parts of this land would be underwater. The big cypress swamp bled into the prairies, creating a unique and often unforgiving ecosystem. Getting around wasn't a matter of hopping in a car. It was a job for a swamp buggy or a good pair of boots. This environment dictated the terms, and for centuries only the toughest plants, animals, and people could make a life here. This was a frontier in the truest sense of the word, where the horizon seemed endless and where the potential of the land was still just a whisper, a hidden promise waiting for someone to come along and figure out what to do with it all. Long before any surveyor's map was drawn, this land was home to people who knew it intimately. The Calusa were the dominant tribe in this part of Florida. They weren't farmers in the traditional sense. They were masters of the coast and the inland waterways. Their world revolved around the abundant life found in the estuaries and swamps. While their main settlements were closer to the coast, their influence and hunting grounds extended deep into the interior, into the very lands that would one day become Hendry County. They navigated this watery world with dugout canoes, living off the fish, shellfish, and game the environment provided. They didn't try to tame the land, they lived within its rhythms. The arrival of the Spanish in the 16th century changed everything, and not for the better. European diseases and violent conflict decimated the Calusa and other native populations. In the chaos, a new group emerged, the Seminole. They were a mix of Creek people who had moved down from Georgia and Alabama, escaped slaves and remnants of other Florida tribes. They adapted to the southern Florida landscape, building their homes, called chickees, on high ground within the cypress swamps and Everglades, laying the groundwork for the next major transformation. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, a new kind of economy began to take shape in the heart of Hendry County. The land that was once seen as impenetrable swamp was reevaluated by a new breed of pioneer, the Florida cattleman or cracker cowboy. Not the cowboys of Hollywood westerns, marsh tackies, the small, tough horses they rode, wide-brimmed hats to fend off the brutal sun, long whips cracking in the air to herd cattle. They saw potential in the vast, open prairies, prime grazing land. The cattle were as tough as the men, descendants of Spanish cattle, scrub or cracker cattle, lean, resilient, perfectly adapted to the harsh Florida environment. They survived the heat, the humidity, the insects, and foraged on native pineland and prairie grasses, not for the faint of heart. A dirty, difficult job, long days in the saddle, navigating snake-infested wetlands, pushing through thick scrub to manage free-roaming herds. The local economy began to revolve around cattle. LaBelle became the rancher's hub. Then the railroad arrived, a game-changer. Moved cattle to markets in other parts of the state. Families passed ranching from one generation to the next, and that equestrian and agricultural heritage later shaped developers' vision, a place for people to build their own ranches. By the mid-20th century, Florida was booming, but the boom was mostly happening along the coast. Miami-Fort Lauderdale exploding with development, drawing people from all over the country, promises of sunshine, a new way of life. Inland counties like Hendry, however, remained largely rural and agricultural. But some developers started to look at this empty land and see a different kind of opportunity. They saw a chance to offer people something the crowded coasts couldn't. Space freedom, a piece of the old Florida frontier. This is where the story of Montura Ranch Estates begins. In the 1960s and early 1970s, a development company, a subsidiary of the Greyhound Corporation of all things, acquired a massive tract of land in eastern Hendry County. This wasn't just any piece of property. It was over 13,000 acres of what had been classic Florida ranch and scrubland. The The company's vision was bold and, for the time, quite unique. They weren't planning to build a dense suburban neighborhood. Instead, they wanted to sell the dream of the ranchette, a small, affordable homestead where a family could have a house, a big yard, and maybe even a horse. The name itself, Montura Ranch Estates, was a piece of marketing genius. Montura is the Spanish word for saddle, a direct nod to the region's deep-rooted equestrian and ranching history. Creating Montura Ranch Estates was more than just drawing lines on a map. It was a full-scale battle against the Florida wilderness. The first and most crucial job was to make the land accessible and habitable. This meant building a road system from scratch. Bulldozers, graders clearing paths through palmetto scrub, clearing paths through pine flatwoods. They scraped away the topsoil to create a network of unpaved shell rock roads that followed a sprawling grid pattern. For the first time, this huge tract of land was carved up and opened up, allowing people to actually reach the lots they were buying, often sight unseen. Water management was the next monumental task. This part of Florida is flat and prone to flooding during the rainy season. To make the land buildable, the developers had to dig an extensive network of drainage canals. These canals served a dual purpose. They would channel the excess water away from the properties and roads, preventing the whole area from turning back into a swamp every summer. The dirt and rock, or spoil, dug out to create the canals was then used to build up the roadbeds, raising them above the surrounding land. This massive earth-moving project fundamentally altered the natural hydrology of the landscape forever, forming the skeleton upon which the living, breathing community of Montura would slowly grow. The first people who moved to Montura Ranch Estates were pioneers in their own right. They were a diverse mix of blue-collar families, retirees, people simply looking for an escape from the hustle and congestion of urban life. Many came from Florida's rapidly growing East Coast, Miami, Fort Lauderdale. They were drawn by affordable land and a quieter, more independent lifestyle. They were modern-day homesteaders, trading city conveniences for space and freedom. Life here was a do-it-yourself project. You didn't just buy a house, you bought a plot of land and figured out the rest. Daily life in the early years was a stark contrast to the suburbs they had left behind. The nearest grocery store or gas station was a long drive away, often over bumpy shell rock roads. Getting mail could be an adventure. Instead of sidewalks and manicured lawns, you had dirt paths and a constant battle with fast-growing vegetation. Neighbors might be a quarter-mile away or even further. This isolation fostered a powerful culture of self-reliance and mutual support. If your car broke down or you needed help putting up a fence, you learned to depend on your neighbors, and they learned to depend on you. A strong, informal network of community support was born out of necessity. It was a culture built on shared experience and a common desire for a simpler, more land-oriented way of life. From its very inception, Montura Ranch Estates was designed with the horse in mind. The name itself was a tribute to the region's ranching past, but the developers went further than just a name. The large lot sizes, typically ranging from 1¼ to 5 acres, were specifically marketed as being perfect for keeping horses. This wasn't just a gimmick, it was a core part of the community's identity. For many buyers, the dream of owning a home in Montura was inseparable from the dream of owning a horse. It tapped into a powerful American ideal of open land, freedom, and the special bond between a person and their animal. This equestrian focus distinguished Montura from almost every other large-scale development in Florida at the time. While other communities were building golf courses, Montura was offering space for pastures. The community's own rules and covenants were set up to be horse-friendly, allowing residents to build barns and stables on their property. This attracted a specific type of resident, people with a genuine passion for horses, from experienced equestrians to families who were excited to own their first pony. This equestrian soul is arguably what makes Montura truly unique in the story of Florida's development, a place where the past isn't just remembered, but is ridden every single day. As more and more people bought into the Montura dream and began to build homes, the community entered a new phase, one of growth and the inevitable growing pains that come with it. The initial rustic infrastructure started to show its age and limitations. The unpaved shell rock roads created clouds of dust in the dry season and could turn into muddy, rutted tracks during the summer rains. Demand for better, more reliable access grew louder, leading to a decades-long process of paving the main thoroughfares. The population of Montura underwent significant changes over the years. Beginning in the 1980s, a significant influx of Hispanic residents arrived, particularly from South Florida. They were drawn by affordable land space, a more agricultural lifestyle. Hurricanes swept through the area, testing resilience. Hurricane Wilma in 2005 caused widespread outages and damage, highlighting the need for self-sufficiency. The 2008 real estate crash hit hard. Property values plummeted and construction stalled. Despite challenges, the community matured. A milestone, the Montura Ranch Estates Property Owners Association formed, took over the clubhouse, the pool, and other common areas. Today, on the 6th of September 2025, Montura Ranch Estates stands as a living testament to a unique chapter in Florida's history, where thousands have found their piece of the Florida dream. A few acres of their own, a big sky overhead, and the freedom to build a life on their own terms.